welcome. We are here at the African Heritage Cultural Center, and I'm here opposite Evo Love, the celebrated artist that we have today. Her artwork is all around us, and I'm about to ask her some questions because I'm sure everybody's curious about what's going on here. So I'm going to speak to Evo, and she's going to tell us some stuff about herself and her work. So shall we begin?
Yes, we shall. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
Well, I've got a lot of questions for you, but the first thing I'd like you to do for us, please, is tell us just a little bit about yourself and quickly, you know, the roads that brought you to be here today with this kind of work and your sort of the life that you live now.
Oh, God. Well, I'm originally born in New York, Long Island. Some say I am Nuyorican. My real father was German. My mother's Puerto Rican. My mother and father divorced when I was like 2 years old. My mother remarried Joe, who you see behind me, who was my stepfather, when I was 9. And they went on their honeymoon to Orlando, Florida, fell in love with Central Florida, and we ended up moving to, I say Daytona Beach because people are more aware of Daytona Beach than Ormond Beach, Florida. But we moved to Ormond Beach, Florida. My stepfather, Joe, had a body shop, opened up a body shop with my Uncle Bill. And I grew up there from 9 to like 15, 16. My mother kicked me out and came to Miami with a roommate and $100 and a rent-a-car. We were illegally renting. And worked in the bar industry for quite a while and really started doing three-dimensional assemblage art, altar-like on furniture, because we were bored, we couldn't get hired, and I needed something to do, and I was given a glue gun by my mother when I came to Miami, and I thought, what the hell am I gonna do with a glue gun? Like, what was she giving me this for, right? But I used that to make three-dimensional works with found objects. And then by word of mouth, people would come over to my apartment or wherever I was staying at that time, because I did a lot of couch surfing. And when people would see these pieces, they would want to buy them immediately. And at that time, I didn't know my worth. I wasn't an academic. I'm not a trained artist. And I was basically giving this work away for free. I was just so excited someone loved them that much that they wanted to own them. And how I got to this place in my life is I just stuck to it. And I really believed in myself as an artist. There was a 7-year sabbatical where I didn't work on art because I was, you know, it's one thing when you're in love with doing art and making art, and every artist has to then go into the business side of art, and the business side can be a very ugly place. And you can lose your passion for that, especially as a female artist, right? And I think we're getting to a more progressive time where we're starting to be acknowledged and celebrated more. But I felt like, I felt really bitter about the art world for like 7 years. And then on May of last year, I travel around a lot with my husband who works in the film business. And I wanted to find an easier way to do artwork and not lug around three-dimensional stuff, materials. And I had a bunch of Life magazines that I sat with, and it was my dad's 6-year anniversary of his death, my stepfather, Joe. And I just started looking at these magazines and seeing cars and liquor and cigarettes, which I've said before were all my dad's favorite things. And that first piece up there was the one I did. I sat down to do a collage and really celebrate my father, and it brought the love back in my heart to do artwork again.
Great. I noticed in some of your work you put like the specs of cars and stuff like that. Is that like supposed to ground us and root us into the body shops that your uncle was running?
Well, the work, a lot of my work, even the three-dimensional, I have very subtle things in there, right? And when I make the work, so because this was really a celebration of my father, who worked in body shops since he was 15 to the time that he died, it was a wink and a nod to people in car culture and people in the car industry, whether it was manufacturing, working on cars, building cars, fabricating pieces for cars. It's a wink and a nod to them. This background that you see is from Chilton's automotive repair and parts book. So people in the car industry really know this book because this is where they have to go if they're doing restoration on vintage cars. This is the Bible, the encyclopedia of where to get those parts, where to put these parts. So in that aspect, the backgrounds of each piece is a wink and a nod to the people that really know cars. The stuff that you see layered on top of that, you know, yes, I'm using popular icons, or I'm using women of color, that women of color can, you know, see themselves in the work, and I'm playing with a lot of color in each piece. You know, so there's something for, you know, every kind of member of my audience, right? And but the backgrounds are really important, and I think that's the most excited I get when somebody, usually men, sorry to say that, but usually men that their dad was, you know, worked in body shops or at dealerships, or I get really excited they know the name of that book
I know.
that I'm pulling from, yeah.
I got it. How about women? I mean, you said usually men, but how do women respond to it? Your art.
Well, women love cars too.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love a nice car?
Yes.
Right?
True.
So I think with women, if I may speak for us, there's many things that could happen. We might date you because you have a nice car.
Yeah, right.
Or we might have family members that, you know, were in the car business, or, you know, we might be attracted to vintage cars. You know, my niece, Gabby's very attractive to the newer cars that are out, but she has an appreciation for cars. Yeah. So, you know, I think women are just as much interested in cars as men, but just a different way, right?
What kind of reactions do you get from people generally? I mean, you do different kind of art.
Yes.
You speak about assembly, art, and we speak about collage. Are they the same? Is there a difference?
Well, I think being an artist, and, you know, there's a couple artists in here. Art is a process, right? It's no different than you being an actor or a musician. It's a very layered thing, right? So that's the commonality. We all have to start with the idea and then executing that idea. And it's all very layered, right? It's layered in music. It's layered in acting. It's layered in writing, you know. So no, I don't think there is a difference. I mean, the material's the difference.
Right.
But the process is the same.
You just keep adding different things, and you keep adding.
Yes, and editing.
And editing.
Because you have to edit too, right?
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes things work.
With each, you have all of them. There's similarity in that you're assembling cigarettes, cars, alcohol, beautiful people, the paperwork, you know, the stuff from the manual,
Oh, okay.
and life itself. Life. Is each one? How are they different from each other? How your process of creating each one? Do you have to have certain elements? Like, I have to have this element, or each one, are you going for a particular goal in each one of these works? How does that work?
Well, there's always a car in it.
It's always a car.
Always.
And you work around the car? Is that what it is?
Sometimes it's the image of the person, the icon.
Yes.
You know, for me, I feel like the inspiration on a piece, like how I come to a piece, it's either I see the image of a person, whether they're famous or not,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
And something's very striking about that picture.
Right.
And then sometimes is I see a car, and it's very striking, and I work around the image of the car. But the three things that are the main idea in each piece is the cars, the cigarettes, and the liquor bottles. And this is because when you had Life, late 30s, which is what I'm working from Life magazines and Ebony magazines. The Life are late 30s up until the 90s.
Wow.
The Ebony magazines are the 70s. What is the most promoted thing in all three of these magazines that stays consistent through decades?
Cigarettes,
Cars.
alcohol, and cars. And cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, once I get past that, then the imagery becomes the necessities of life, right? So what do we all need as humans? Food. So you see a lot of food in this work. You see a lot of necessities like watches, tell time.
That's a necessity? Okay.
Yeah, it is, though, right?
Yeah, yes, it is.
And so then that's when the other parts of the story start, revealing themselves too by the imagery that I'm using. Why I picked the particular typewriter in that piece.
So it's connected, okay, you're connected to the character, the person, that image.
Or the car.
The car,
it's
right.
It's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. It's the same thing with the work.
So they're all from the same time period? Like your cigarettes and your booze would be from the same time period necessarily?
No, not necessarily, because, you got to think, and I hate to say this because I don't want to put a negative spin on anything, but, we just got to be realistic with what was happening, right, in advertising. So in Life magazine, you had every company advertising in that magazine that could, right?
Yeah.
That could afford to.
Yeah.
And Ebony magazine, it wasn't the same companies.
No.
And because those companies might have been a little prejudiced, right? They weren't, it's one thing, and I hate to say it like this, right? But these bigger businesses or corporations, it's not that they're not maybe racist or biased, but they're smart because they target all of us, right?
Yes.
Well, some companies will say, no, I'm not going to promote my product in there because I don't want a particular kind of person buying my product, right?
Right.
That's how bigoted they are.
Yes.
So I didn't notice that right away. That happened organically while I was working with these magazines.
Wow.
Because I noticed what were companies promoting in Ebony magazine that they weren't promoting in Life, and vice versa, right? When it was really hard for me to get the Life in Espanol, in Spanish, and then when you get the Life in Espanol, what you start noticing too was they weren't really spending money on color in the magazines. It was all black and white. All the advertising was black and white. So they would advertise, and another thing they would advertise to us was jewelry, liquor, cigarettes, cars, right? So you would be like, but why wasn't this advertisement in color like it is in the Life? Same thing happened with Ebony too, right? They would kind of cheap out on some of those advertising. Another thing that I would find is I get Life in Espanol, right? And I don't speak Spanish, so I get a lot of slack for being Puerto Rican and not really speaking Spanish, right? And but what I notice is here I get so excited to find these Life in Espanol, and I didn't even know there was Life in Espanol, right? And I get them thinking, oh, I'm going to learn about a famous Latin actress, singer, actor, governor, whatever, right? Important person, political person. And it was covering all the people in America. It was telling stories of Elizabeth Taylor, you know. So, I mean, there was one story or two on Latin culture, but it was mostly American culture that the commentary was on.
That's interesting. I just got to mention, when I first came to America in the late 70s, the landlord to my grandmother asked why Ebony magazine is so prejudiced. Why don't they have white people in it? I said, how could you ask that? I see Vogue, I see all these magazines, they don't have one black person in it. And so it's just interesting that you bring it up with Life and Ebony, and I remember my response to that. And when I was living in Guyana, I see Ebony magazine. I thought America is great for black people. I'm like, wow, I'm coming to America. You know, everybody's dressed so well.
Little did you know.
Yeah. You know, so it's interesting that you picked that up yourself just by going back through
just
them.
Observing,
yes,
right?
Yes,
so it wasn't a thing I was intentionally
it's
looking for.
It's not like political, going to school talking. It's just observing.
It's just noticing the differences as you're working with each magazine.
Wow.
So you're seeing these different things that, you know, just like in Ebony magazine, you're not going to see the kind of hair products in Life magazine. Right? Because in black culture, black people use different kind of conditioning, relaxers. You're not going to see that in Life magazine.
Are people aware of that? Like when they see your work, are they catching the same things that you caught?
I would hope so, you know.
Have you gotten that feedback?
You know, not really. Sometimes somebody will bring it up, but, you know, I think when I do people of color, because I know people of color very well, they're my friends and family, I think that I'm just telling that story of a person's culture, just like I'm telling the story of a white person's culture or an Asian person's culture. And that culture being in America. Because we're all American, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would love to use magazines from other countries, you know, if I could get my hands on them. But I haven't been able to get my hands on them yet, you know.
How do you relate? You went back in time when you went to, you know, the 30s with Life and the old, you know, 70s Ebonies and stuff like that. This is stuck in time there, but how does it relate to the time that we're living in? When you, how are you linking them together at all? Or are you
it's
there?
It's not something, you know, I think I'm making them now, so that's what makes them relevant, right?
Yes.
And I think everybody's attracted to nostalgia, right? When we see something that our grandmother had or our grandfather had, or, you know, you know what I find, I say this, and I'm sorry to get off track, but I don't think people appreciate those things that, you know, like when something breaks, now somebody just replaces it with something new, right? And I think, you know, the idea of an heirloom, you know, our newer generation doesn't really get that, right? Our grandmother's locket, or, you know, they don't find it as precious as somebody in my age group or older than me, how precious those things are. I think everybody can kind of enjoy the work because it is so nostalgic. And I think the reaction I get a lot of times is, oh, my mother's car, my father's car. I remember when my grandfather used to take me out in this Cadillac, you know, that I do get a lot of. So I think what makes it relevant now, it's not that it's intentional, my purpose to make it relevant. I think what I'm really doing, because I love old stuff and vintage stuff, is I'm making you remember, just in case you forgot, or reminding you, or for a newer generation, now they're looking at the work and having an appreciation for something that they might not even be aware existed, right? Because a lot of this stuff, some of it doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
You know, so now it it makes them start spinning in their head like, oh, I never seen this before. Or, like a lot of times, I'm not going to embarrass somebody in the room right now, but a lot of times, a certain person in my life loves rap and hip hop. And I love that too, right? But they don't remember the 70s musicians that first created that song,
yes.
and that the rapper or hip hop
Yes.
artist stole the beat from,
Yes,
right?
yeah. Samples.
I'm not even gonna look that way for a second.
Right.
But like, so we'll be talking, and he's like, oh, they stole that from this rapper. And I'm like, no, they stole that from Kool and the Gang, or they stole that from Barry White, like, so it's like, or Sister Sledge, they don't realize these certain beats were not originated by this rapper. They bit it,
So in a way, just by what you're saying, it sounds like these are helping us to hover over America and look and see the pattern, because it's been a pattern for a long time. The icons in entertainment. You've got
Well, I think
John Wayne.
there's a history, right?
Right. There's a history.
And I'm getting, I get a lot of slack for the John Wayne, because now we found out John Wayne was very racist. When I was growing up with John Wayne, I was just sitting down with my dad at 12 o'clock on a Sunday when these movies used to come on, like the Westerns and karate movies that Wu-Tang Clan was just as inspired by, right? And it would be on a Sunday, and that was me and my dad. That was my dad's only day off. And we'd sit there at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd get our drinks and our chips, our munchies, and we'd be kicking it, watching a John Wayne movie, not knowing what his political beliefs were, not knowing that he was a racist, right? And then now we realize, oh, he's pretty racist, right? But when I do the John Wayne piece, I'm not doing it to celebrate a racist. I'm doing it because it was a sentimental time that I spent with my father watching Westerns. Yeah. I would have done Clint Eastwood. And I'm not particularly fond of Clint Eastwood's political beliefs, right?
Yeah.
But if I would have found a good image of Clint Eastwood or Chuck Norris, who didn't grow up on all the bad Chuck Norris movies, forgive me, Chuck Norris, but this was something that me and my father watched on Sundays religiously. Now,
I grew up in my country, and Guyana,
Yes.
and even in England. My West Indian uncles,
Yeah.
who are, they're no longer alive. They talk about, hey, like he's a bad John. When you speak about a bad John, like a cool dude who's like tough,
Yeah.
you're speaking about John Wayne.
And Jamaica,
And John Wayne, you're a bad John.
yeah, in Jamaica they love John Wayne.
Yeah.
And they ain't giving him up either. He
No,
ain't getting
no.
canceled.
No.
He ain't getting canceled. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't get canceled.
Right.
But what I'm saying, like Queen Elizabeth, I just got a lot of slack for Queen Elizabeth, and who knew, right?
Yeah.
Who knew I would get that? I'm not really, as artists, whether you're a musician, whatever type of art you do, I hate to say it, we're not doing it for the people, we're doing it for ourselves, right? So I'm not gonna stop anybody that I wanna do a piece on because you got something to say. Matter of fact, I think it's kind of good that I'm doing it because it opens a conversation and it has us debating and talking about it. I'm not into agreeing with everything you have to say, and I don't expect you to agree with anything I have to say. I think that's what makes for an interesting conversation, is to challenge each other's beliefs, to see things from a different perspective and point of view. Sometimes it's hard for me to accept people's point of view. Sometimes I will cancel some people out of my life. but I can honestly say that I'll sit back and really think about what that person has to say, even if they piss me off to the, most extreme feeling of being pissed off. And then I can go back after I really sat on that for a little while and, maybe talk to that person again. Maybe.
Well,
you know.
speaking about that,
Queen Elizabeth, though, if you don't mind me getting on that,
Yeah.
you know, I was told I was fetishizing Queen Elizabeth. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? I said, no, I wasn't, right? And I understand now. You got to remember, I'm not college educated. I'm not an academic. I didn't study, you know, politics or literature or, you know, different things, right? Everything I learned was me just being a reader, right? And having an interest in something. I didn't really study Queen Elizabeth here, right? But what I will say why, and I'm not trying to justify this, but whether you like Queen Elizabeth or not, she is a big part of my living life and a lot of people's living life, right? Because she's been the Queen of England for decades.
Since the last century.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, that is why I did the piece, right?
Yeah.
That's why I did the piece. I wasn't saying colonialism was right. I wasn't saying that, you know, oh, she's the best queen ever. You know what I mean? I also think, too, this is interesting that you bring this up and we talk about the queen, right?
Yeah.
I really feel sorry for the newer generation right now. Because when I was growing up, let's say if we said something homophobic, right? And we're young, and we're using the F word, right? Because a lot of people use that word. And we say the F word. And then guess what? We finally meet a friend that's been in the closet and he says, you know, you use the F word and, you know, it really hurts me. You're hurting me. And then, you know, you go, oh, I'm going to stop saying the F word because I really love this person and I didn't realize I was hurting this person. So I'm going to change my language and change my behavior and be more conscientious of people I don't know, maybe in the closet, you know, right? And the same for people who are racist. Maybe they learn, that's a learned behavior, right? So they learn that from somebody. And then they start growing up and they go, oh, well, I didn't really mean to say that, right? It seems like now with the cancel culture, nobody can make a mistake. No one.
Stays forever.
Especially younger kids. That's who I worry about the most, right? Is younger kids. Because if they make a mistake, they get crucified now. They're not allowed to make that mistake and learn from that mistake and then go on. And it be not swiped under the rug. Okay, we know you made the mistake, but not be haunted by it for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
You know? And that's a scary part of where we're at right now for me, seeing that. Because I know a lot of my friends are in this audience, and I know smartphones weren't around when we were growing up. And I know we weren't being recorded and paper trails. And I mean, a lot of us in here got away with murder, including my husband. You know, where we did things that maybe we weren't so proud of, but we learned from it, right? There was consequences. I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences. There were consequences and we learned from it. But right now, cancel culture is like, yo, that'll take your career out. That'll take you out. You'll never be able to resurface or survive from that again. And I don't really believe in that, you know? Like, for instance, Louis C.K., the comedian, what he was doing was very wrong, right? Am I never going to listen to Louis C.K.? I'll give you an example. When I got, slack for John Wayne and I got slack for, Queen Elizabeth, well, me and my husband love James Brown. And, and look he was abusive, right? I mean, he was one of the best. I think we have this expectation of people for them to be this perfect person there, but we're all flawed. We're all flawed. You know, and I'm sure the more famous you get, the more that magnifying glass is on your flaws. But every single one of us in this room is flawed in some way.
Well, when we talk about cancel culture now, we're also talking about people's deep-held beliefs and things that affect them. And those people who are affected by certain things are going to speak out. They're going to cancel that or cancel that. Now, you have your art in here, and I'm sure at some times you get very strong reactions. What do you get strong reactions? Do you
No.
get mild reactions to your art? How does that work?
No, I think, all these pieces come from love. I mean, I would hope that's what everybody who looks at these pieces, whether if it's my love for cars or my love for people, right? So I think that I'm not exploiting anybody in these pieces because I have a true love for the subject.
I'm not talking about
no, but
offense.
I'm saying
Right,
if somebody was have a real reaction, I don't know what that reaction would be because these are all love stories.
I got you.
My work comes from a true blue place of love, right? And so in each piece, even, some of my pieces of color, my Asian girls, I pretend I am that woman. I pretend I am that man, because some are just the man, some are the man and woman, some are the woman. And I pretend I'm those people to tell that story and how I want my story to be told. I mean, I could not tell you how much in love with this work I am right now. I don't want to stop. Like some people go, well, Evo, don't be too prolific. You gotta pick a number and you gotta stop. And I gotta tell you, there ain't no stopping me right now. There is no stopping me right now. There's no stopping me right now because I'm so in love with the work.
Let me pause for a second.
Okay.
I want to check with the audience here. I mean, you've heard a lot. I'm sure some of you have some questions. Would you care to ask any questions from Evo?
Oh, do you want to pass this mic around? Okay, it's.
Yes,
okay.
you'd like one?
Just an observation and a question. When we look at
Can everybody hear her? Okay. All right.
an observation and a question, when you look at the kind of advertising and
Here you go.
when you look at the kind of advertising and the restrictive advertising that you've mentioned, what I see is a straight through line to today, where even in current issues of Essence, which is really the only magazine that really is targeting black women and is now white owned, but you see a no urban dictate, which to this day, like companies there's a long list of them, including Weight Watchers until they had Jennifer Hudson, who became the most successful spokesperson for Weight Watchers. But what I wanted to know is why your mother gave you that glue gun.
My mother was an artist, and she was really amazing too. She still really is. And anything she puts her hands to, she's really good at it. I don't want to speak too much about my mom and the psychology behind her art career, but she's a crafter, and so crafters tend to use glue guns. So she just gave me this glue gun like I was going to be the next in line to start crafting. And it's funny because I ended up using that glue gun, and that artwork was made, and that artwork is in 7 continents right now, and it's well collected. So even though I thought, oh my God, this is such a joke that she gave me a glue gun, and what the hell am I gonna do with this? I put it to good use, It was such an odd thing to give me, but looking back, I mean, it worked out, right? It worked out. Like sometimes you fall into your place in life, right? Sometimes you fall into your niche. I guess, that was my niche. But she's an amazing crafter till this day. She makes jewelry. I mean, she can make the wall look like real bricks from a, old English castle. I mean, she's that talented, but she just doesn't pursue art like that,
It was so cool that she gave you that, and you're like, what?
Yeah, what the hell am I gonna do with this? Yeah, it really was. And then I started using it. I was like, oh, this ain't too bad, And I used it for many years. I mean, it's just recently that I started collage. It was just last year, May 27th, that I even,
Did it have anything to do with COVID?
No, not at all. It really had to do with finding an easier way to travel with materials, because I leave with my husband a lot of time for the jobs he does out of the state. So that's what it was supposed to be about. Now, I thought I was going to get off easy, and this was going to be easier because three-dimensional objects are so heavy to carry around. But let me be the first to tell you that did not work. And I probably carry around 300 pounds of magazines and glues and adhesives. But yeah, it did not turn out being like, as artists, I think we're always trying to cut a corner here and there, right, in a way. Like, oh, how's this going to be easier for us? But it was not easy. No, it was not easy.
Anybody else?
One thing you left out when you're talking about your history, I'll just yell really loud, is when you had Stash Gallery. And that's when I became fascinated in you. I've known you for years, but that's the fact that she was showing other people's work. It said a lot about her own aesthetic by showing the stuff she really liked that other people made. And it brought her to this, because I think that was a great interval in your life when you had the gallery and you were having exhibitions for other people.
Well, me and my husband opened up a gallery called Stash Gallery, and it was really to... The major galleries at the time in Miami weren't showing certain types of work. They were keeping us out of the major galleries. This was glitter artists, this was graffiti artists, this was black artists. We weren't really prevalent in those galleries. And I had a really good sale where a collector in Switzerland who actually started Art Basel with, I think, Craig Robbins, Art Miami, saw my work underneath a bridge, because we used to do street shows, and bought my whole collection. Wow. And with that money, we used that to open up a gallery. We got the gallery, and it was a two-car garage. That's what it really was, the structure. But we made it look like a gallery. Right? And my husband's really crafty. He's an artist, in his own right. And we said, we're going to show the work that these galleries are not giving these artists a chance to show and not taking this artwork seriously. And it was graffiti artist. It was, extremely talented glitter artist. It was, black painters such as Biunga, Adonis Parker. The one thing I can say is, like, you don't take no for an answer, right? You don't.
Who?
Anybody.
Right.
Anybody. Mm-hmm. If you have a dream and you're ambitious and you're true to the art or whatever you do, whatever that artwork is, and that could be anything, right? Because I consider all things art. If you have a belief in something and a passion, eventually you're going to get to a yes. You just have to persevere, and you have to work hard at what you do.
Now, you had a passion. Your passion is art.
Well, my passion was to own a gallery.
To own a gallery, okay.
So to show this artwork, and we used to do it guerrilla style. We used to rent a 48-foot box truck, fill it up with everybody's artwork that wasn't getting recognized locally. And then we would pick out a list of all the major galleries, and we would park that truck on their openings and open up the truck and hope we wouldn't get arrested.
I'd have to say that is gangster.
Oh, it was real gangster. And I was real afraid of jail, too, by the way. And let me tell you, I cannot tell you how many times I was threatened. Threatened, because these graffiti artists, I'm not going to name no names, they were painting on these buildings. Oh. And these guys who own these buildings were pissed. Wow. And they wouldn't go up to Romaine. They would come up to me, threatening me. Yeah. Oh, you better tell me this guy's name, and I want to know who. At first you think they're a collector and they're interested in the work because they're looking at it real closely. And the next thing, man, you're getting threatened, and you're getting threatened with the police. But I was just as hardcore. You know, I've been on the streets since I'm 15 years old. So that kind of stuff don't really play with me. And I'm New Yorican, remember I said that? So, you know, I could take it. I'd be like, yeah, go ahead, do what you got to do. Yes.
Have you done theater too?
In the beginning, when I was in school, they really wanted me to be an actress. I just never pursued it because it was one of those things that I felt like in that time everybody was trying to be an actress.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't pursue it. But I'm sure I got some skills in that department when I need to.
Never too late. Never too late.
But what I want to say, continue saying about the gallery is we finally got the gallery. And I find this as a problem sometimes in the art community. And I don't know how to say this in the way I want to say it, but I'm just going to say it, right? Not, for me, I'm not competitive with other artists. Because guess what? Somebody's going to like collage and somebody's not, right? So I don't have a problem if you don't like my work. Well, let me bring you to the work you might like. Oh, is that painting? Is that watercolor? Is that sculpture? What is it? Because I probably have a friend that does it that you'll like. That's what the gallery was really about. And also, we didn't take a commission at the gallery. Because when you were an artist, well, first of all, we were all broke, but we didn't take a commission. Not saying that's the smartest business thing to do. We just didn't do it because we knew these artists, just like ourselves, were struggling too, right? So it was more about getting the artist exposure and getting the artist a serious collector that would hopefully take their career to the next level, right? And what I want to say about the graffiti artist is when I was getting threatened and police and you're going to be in jail and blah, 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 now all these developers are hiring these graffiti artists to paint on their new buildings and new businesses. Thank you very much, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ended the Stash Gallery? Where was that?
Yeah, we ended it, it was off of Northeast 50th, what was it, Row Ave or Terrace? It was on Northwest. Now you go by there and, you know, multi-millionaire developers have taken over and they changed the whole aesthetic of the place. But, you know, it's like a Walt Disney World now when you go over to that location. But, yeah, it was a two-car garage. That's really what it was. It was 400 square feet in each section of it. And half of it was my studio, and the other half was to showcase artists, local artists, who weren't being recognized in this town.
Obviously, it did bring some attention to your work too.
Well,
right?
it created a lot of. I don't think the attention of my work was so important as much as it was important to showcase artists that were being overlooked, and you know, it definitely nurtured Romaine and I's relationships with a lot of artists because we believed in these people and we believed in their work, you know, and we still do.
Yeah, you still have a strong network.
Yes, we do. And I think because we also were a gallery who paid right away when a piece was sold, which it's cowboys and Indians in the gallery business. And a lot of people get ripped off, so you gotta worry about that. We ended up being very reputable people, you know, and
Is there a difference between when you're doing it then and now? Is there any advice that you give to anybody about opening a gallery now? What's different now?
Don't do it.
You know?
Let me tell you, you have these dreams when you're young. You're like, oh, but when I own a gallery, it's going to be like this and this and this and this and this. And people ask me this too. Like they'll say, oh, well, you think I should open that? I said, don't do it. Don't do it. And they'll go, why? Why? And I think the main reason is because it takes away from your work, right? Because let me tell you something, if I represent you, I got to put 200% in you just like I put 200% in me, right? And to do that every month for a different featured artist is taking away from my work. So I get offered, like, I'll get, oh, Evo, you know, we want you to run this art hotel. I'm like, nope. Oh, Evo, you can ask me advice all day long, that'll come free. But when people have ideas about putting me in a place and having me work for them, I hate to say this, I don't know if this is gonna hurt me, but I'm just like, no. Because I don't want that commitment. Yeah. And I don't want it to take away from my work, right? And it's very important that, I think as artists, I want someone who's repping me, and not really an artist, by the way. I wouldn't mind it, like I'm not against it, but I want my dealer or the gallery person to be working just as hard as the marketing and promotions as I am in my work, and having us like Wonder Twins match each other's energy. And that's the kind of relationships I look for. And that's the kind of relationships I would advise any artist in this room to look for. If you're a gallery person, you don't want your work up on a wall as decoration.
No.
You don't want your work up on the wall just to make somebody look good. You want somebody that is making it their job to find the collectors, because what's a collector? A collector is somebody that preserves the artist's work. Mm-hmm. That's what a collector really is. It's a person who is preserving the work of the artist. I've been to some big collectors' homes where they have a massive collection, and I see photography right next to the window with the sun blazing on it, and the colors pulled from that photography. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that photograph is garbage now because they didn't protect the work. They didn't with my own work. Yeah, I use a UV coating on my three-dimensional stuff. It's intentional, right? Because I'm hoping that the work never sees sun, right? Some of these collectors, they got more money than God. They put it right by the window, and the sun will bleed out the color because it's been sitting there for 10 years and never moved. You know, as a collector, me and my husband are collectors, by the way, too. My house is very dark because I'm trying to preserve the work. Some stuff I can't even tell you without embarrassing myself. It's under couches, beds. I mean, I got work hidden all over the place. I probably shouldn't say that. I don't want nobody robbing me.
Anybody else?
I'm assuming you're working still off your stepfather's manual. Did you have to procure another of those auto magazine manuals, or are you still working off his original?
I'm still working off the Chilton's. It's not my dad's manual. It's just a manual that all automotive people use to restore cars or find parts or the serial numbers for the parts in cars. But yeah, I'm continuing the Chilton's thing for a while. I'm about to go into another series where it's going to be, I grew up in Daytona. I think I mentioned that. There's a lot of bikers in Daytona, so I'm about to do one on motorcycles. I also, it's a big fishing industry in Florida, and I'm a Floridian, and a lot of the people that did the motors for the cars also did the motors for boats. So I'm about to do a whole fishing series with boats. So I have a couple ideas of pieces that I have, like a series that I have in the works, and it's going to be bikers and, you know, kind of X-rated kind of stuff going on in the biker pieces because they're really hardcore. And then I'm keeping true to the element of the people, but yeah, I plan to do a boat series, more aquatic kind of thing, and then a biker series, and then I don't know if you guys saw the Steve McQueen and Joanna, Paul Newman and Joanna, what was it? Woodward, that documentary. So I saw that documentary, and this is another way I get inspired, by the way, to do a piece. Yeah. I saw that documentary, it was unbelievable, and I knew who Paul Newman was, but I never really knew who Joanna was, right? Isn't that weird? So I see this documentary and I'm like, oh my God, this thing is incredible, this story. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I couldn't stop talking about it either, by the way. I see something good, I'm like telling everybody, yo, did you see this? You got to watch this, right? So I see this and I'm like, oh man, I got to do a piece on Paul Newman, especially Paul Newman. He's a race car driver, right?
Yeah.
So that's how some of these pieces get inspired. So I'm doing 2 on him.
He's also a professor of economics too. When he was alive.
Yeah, but you don't know all these things until you study somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I picked out the quotes for the pieces, it was very intentional for the ebony pieces to have black, female, or male literature, writers, authors, people in civil rights that said the quote, the gay community, I have a lot of pieces here. So it was very important for me to fit the quote and the song with the piece. And then I see this quote by Zora Neale Hurston, who I'm very hot about right now, by the way. And it was a very clever quote. I loved it. Somebody said, oh, Evo, you would love her. You need to read her stuff. And, okay, I bought the whole box set because, I'm extra. And, then you find out Zora died in Fort Pierce, penniless, in an unmarked grave. She was from Eatonville, Florida. And, that's kind of how I learned things, right? It's like self-taught. I'm truly a self-taught artist because this is how I'm learning things. Another thing you'll see in these pieces that I think goes over a lot of people's heads is with the icon pieces, they're very connected, right? So when you have Rita Moreno and you have Marlon Brando,
They used to date.
Mm. She comes out with her biography. I didn't know this. I'm Puerto Rican. I didn't know this. But she almost kills herself because she gets pregnant by Marlon Brando, and he says, hey, we got to get rid of this. It's going to be a problem. She goes to have the abortion. It's a botched abortion. She almost bleeds to death. Then she wants to kill herself. Wow. Who gets Moreno involved in the civil rights movement? Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando is very much in the civil rights movement, and he was one of the actors that showed up along with Paul Newman and all these other white actors and actresses that were supporting Martin Luther King for one of his biggest speeches on civil rights. Now, I didn't know that because I'm not, like I said, I'm not an academic. I'm not going to college. I'm not studying literature. I'm not studying, civil rights movements. But I'm learning this as I go. Kind of late in the game, right? I'm 49, so
Never
it's kind of
too
like late in the game. But you start seeing how we're all connected. That's my point, right? We're all connected. And I wasn't that aware that Paul Newman also went to the Martin Luther King speech, and they were standing with something. This Indian woman, I just forgot her name. It's Little Feather, right?
She represented Marlon Brando?
At the Oscars.
Right.
She just passed away 2 days ago.
Oh,
And, that was pretty huge.
that was big.
That was pretty huge. So, you got to love Marlon Brando because,
Native Americans, he was the number one man, trying to with their cause.
Marilyn Monroe, I don't think a lot of people hear the story, what she did for Ella Fitzgerald.
Oh, yeah.
Not a lot of people are aware what she did. I just saw Blonde, this new movie that came out on Marilyn. It was very hardcore, very dark story, fiction. But we really need this movie about Marilyn to be made by women that's going to tell the story, and not the same old story we've been hearing about Marilyn. Oh, she slept her way to the top. Oh, they were all doing that at that time. All of them. Name one.
Yeah, oh.
They were all doing it. Dorothy Dandridge, Ava Gardner. They were all doing something on the casting couch. It's an old story, but we don't hear the empowerment of these. First of all, you got to be strong to be on a casting couch. The casting couch shouldn't exist, but you have to be mentally strong to be on the casting couch, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not promoting the casting couch. I'm just saying what women went through back then. But, you know, they're made out to look like a victim, but the strength in these women to keep going and to keep getting there no matter what, it needs to be told. And I think women need to finally tell that story on Marilyn. You know, don't get me wrong. I like Anna, the actress, totally transformed into Marilyn Monroe. It's pretty unbelievable. I mean, I couldn't believe it myself. She's amazing, the transformation. The accent could have been worked on a little bit more, but she is amazing as Marilyn. Like, I forget that I'm looking at Anna and I'm looking at Marilyn. Same with, who's that actress that just played Judy Garland? Renee Zellweger. I thought, oh my God, she's playing this lady? Then when I saw the movie, first 5 minutes, I totally forgot that was Renee. I mean, that's a good artist, right? That makes for a good artist when they make you forget,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
With
Yes,
Marilyn,
natural.
it needs to be told what she did for,
Yes.
Ella Fitzgerald. That was important. That was a really important thing to do
Yes.
during that time.
Yes, yes.
And she said, look, you don't let Ella play, I'm never coming here again. And no, Ella ain't walking through the back door. She's coming in through the front door. We all are one, and we all need to support each other, no matter what our culture is. Now, if you see somebody down, you need to help pick them up, right? If you see somebody being unjustly, somebody doing an injustice to somebody, you need to speak up and speak out.
Yes.
And not all of us have the balls to do it, right? Or the strength to do it. I see a lot of protesters and stuff, and I got to tell you, after being arrested, because I was arrested once and beat up by cops, I don't want to be arrested again and beat up by cops. So I protest in a different way. I don't know if and I'm being real with you, I don't know if I'd be in the front lines of like what's going on in Ukraine and Russia right now. That's really heavy stuff going on. People are putting their life on the line. They're going, you know what? It's at the point where we need freedom, and I don't care if I'm dying today for that freedom. I really admire those people because I don't think I would have that strength inside myself. And I'm very honest about that.
We never know until the time comes.
Yeah, but I don't know, but I'm telling you,
Yeah.
if they would have said, oh, it's time to leave, I'd have been on the train. I'm just being honest with you. Because I really love life. I'd have been on the train.
Well, I've got a question because
I'd find a different way to protest, I
you've
guess.
got music attached to your art.
It's very
We
important,
can, how do you select the music?
Well, the music comes after the piece, so once I finish the piece, it's to the quote, and then it goes to the song.
Okay.
But the songs and the quotes are just as important to the piece.
Yes, yes.
It's helping tell the story of the work, right?
Yes.
And it's like inspiring your imagination too.
Yeah. And it helps you to make more connections within what
Yeah,
you mentioned.
and I think in all of our work, music, in all of life, music's important, but especially in body shops. They always have the music on while they're working, it's whistle while you work kind of thing. So, music's really a big part of it too, right? I mean,
Did you learn anything in the body shop? Did you learn any mechanics?
Now it's one of those moments I say that I took for granted growing up in body shops. I really should have paid attention to what my dad was doing so I wouldn't have to ask anybody to help me with anything that's related to a car. Or I would know when a guy was trying to rip me off at a body shop. Thank God I'm married to the man I'm married back there because, he knows a thing or two. But I kind of kick myself in the ass now for not really paying attention. Like, he was a judge at Super National and Gator National shows. Those are car shows in Florida. And what he did teach me was when you have a classic car, he could tell if the classic car was in an accident right away. He would tell me, I'd go, oh my God, that car is beautiful. My dad would go, let me show you something. And he'd pull me over, And he'd go, look at this car from the side. And we'd be bent down at eye level with the car, and he'd go, look at the side. Look at the door. Look at the body of the car. See all those dents? Yeah, that's not good. He would tell me about paint jobs. You know, he was a master painter on cars. He would tell me about paint jobs. And then, you know, you didn't pay attention too closely, right? But then he would point things out, and he'd be like, this is a shitty paint job. This paint job ain't gonna last. It's gonna start chipping any day now. When the chameleon paint came out for cars, you never seen somebody get so excited about paint in your life, okay? When the chameleon paint came out, it's like the most expensive paint. This guy was like doing cartwheels. He couldn't wait to work with this paint because it was really expensive. I think for a pint was way expensive, you know, really high. I forget how high, but it was pretty astronomical.
So what would you say is the philosophy? We're talking about the body shop. What is the chief philosophy or one of the philosophies that you find that you represent in your art?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Philosophy?
There's an ambiance. It seems there's an ambiance. There's an energy in the body shop. You mentioned music. What are the things that make a body shop to you? At least the ones that you're...
The smell.
The smell.
The smell is very distinct in a body shop.
Yeah.
Not just with the oils, but with the paints, right?
For sure, yeah.
So I think the smell is very... And, you know, my grandfather was a very popular chef in New York. Mm-hmm. And my grandfather was a military man on my stepfather's side. And he was... he put a lot of importance in knives, his tools of the trade. And all growing up, he was like, you got to have a clean kitchen before and after and during. There was no letting dishes sit in the sink. What I'm getting at is my dad was the same way in his work, right? He had to have a clean body shop. So in the morning, it was clean. And then he would mess it up. And then at the end, he would clean it again. You know, you go into a lot of body shops, they ain't so clean. But this guy was meticulous when it came to a body shop. It was very in order. And I think I'm like that. Me and my husband are collectors, and we collect many different things, not just artwork. And I have a lot of crap, but it's all put in its place. It's all in order. And it's the same way I work on these pieces in the studio.
That's your ritual? You say it's a ritual that you have?
Yeah, it definitely is. It starts off, I put the music on, I have coffee and a couple cigarettes. And I sit there and I go through either images and whatever excites me, if it's the car first or the image of the person. I sit there and then I play around with it like a puzzle. And then after I'm done, this could be very frustrating to my husband too, because after I'm done, I have to get that quote and that song. I have to document it. And then I have to clean up my studio, and then I go into the house to settle down for the evening, you know? And it has to be done, or I think every artist has a sense of OCD to them, right? We all have a little bit of OCD. So I think it's something that, you know, we all have it. I'm sorry, I don't know one artist that does not have OCD. So, or perfectionist that doesn't have OCD. So, you know.
We got time for one more question, maybe? Anybody? Any comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Is each piece a standalone piece, or does the culmination of them tell a story in a sequence?
No, each one is its own, you know, piece. No diptychs. Yeah, no, I didn't do that. And if it happened, it was really organically, you know. Like I worked on Marlon, I think way before I worked on Moreno, you know. And then, you know, that's the exciting part about it, right? Is to find out they were in a huge love affair. And then you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that, you know? And you're like, holy crap, this was like, you know, so each piece stands alone. I'm going to do another piece with Marilyn, and she's right there in the back, and Joe DiMaggio's with her in that one. But there's going to be another one where it's Henry Miller, you know? Because you start going, oh, I'm still not done telling this story, right? And the same with Elizabeth Taylor. She was just such a great subject, right? So, and Gina, like, I hope another thing that happens with the pieces, especially with the younger generation, and even me, I was unaware of some of these actors, like Gina, who's in that piece in the back.
Is that Gina Davis?
No, it's Gina Bobolina.
Oh.
Lola Brigida, right? Yeah, Lola Brigida. So I had no idea, but she was like a vixen.
Yeah.
And she was Italian, and Italian people can really appreciate her in a piece, right? Because I'm representing their culture. I had no idea she was considered one of the most sexiest women in the world.
Yes.
I had no idea. And so I said, oh, I like this image of this woman. And I said, oh, Gina, it seemed like she was important because they were writing about her quite a bit in life, right? I said, well, let me look her up. Started looking her up, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not done with her. She's gonna make a comeback, Really?
Wow.
That's amazing. She's still alive? How old is she? But there were some people here that I learned about that I wasn't aware of. The two Asian actresses, they were a big deal, man. And little did I know how powerful, and they were entrepreneurs. They went way beyond acting. Like, these women were powerhouses. And how come we don't know about them? Right?
Yes.
How come they're not celebrated?
Yeah.
I think we all want to see ourselves, right? I mean, for the longest time, I could only, you had to be a dark-skinned girl for me to be able to go, oh, that's somebody like me, right?
Yes.
So I always tell the story of Beverly Johnson. And like certain black women were kind of like my role models growing up. They weren't, I'm not too dark, but at that time when I was younger, I was always in the sun. So it was a lot darker, my skin.
Could you name about 3 that kind of influenced you? 3 or 4?
Back when I was young,
Yeah.
it was Beverly Johnson. There was this woman with curly hair. I think she was a French actress that did a movie with Pee Wee Herman that I could kind of relate to because we both had the curly hair, There were certain people that I would be like, oh, I want to be like that,
Rita Moreno? No?
Rita Moreno, for any Puerto Rican to say no, I mean, we all wanted to be a West Side Story, no?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what's great about that story is it really represents our culture in the sense of how much we love dance, how much we love America. Well, some did, some didn't, right? It talked about the challenges we have within our own cultures, right?
Yes.
Because, some people are ashamed to be Puerto Rican. Some people aren't.
Right.
Yeah, I don't straighten my hair. There's this, there's this conversation being had within the Latin community about, oh, I had to be more white and straighten my hair to be accepted in a white community in Texas. I'm like, no, you didn't. You chose to do that. Right? I straighten my hair sometimes, but I straighten my hair when I'm getting tired of my hair being curly forever and I want a new look. Right? It's more of like a costume change. But I don't straighten my hair because I'm ashamed of my curly hair or being Puerto Rican. I'm not wearing pearls in my ears because I'm trying to be as white as I can be. And I've been accused of passing. I can't be ashamed of my mom marrying a German guy and I'm half white. I'm not picking sides. I've been told I need to pick a side. I'll pick no damn side. I'm picking all sides, right? I'm representing everybody because I'm not ashamed of who I am. Hey, I didn't learn Spanish, and it was probably my mom's fears and my grandma's fears of racism that was being directed their way growing up in New York when Puerto Ricans started coming to take over factory jobs. That, that was a way to protect me, even though it hurt me because I'm not bilingual.
And you don't even know Puerto Rican?
What do you mean? Well, I'm accused of not being Puerto Rican.
No. I have friends, my Puerto Rican friends, asked them to help me with my Spanish homework. I said, you sons, I failed my Spanish because you gave me wrong Spanish. What do you expect? We speak Puerto Rican.
Yeah. And Mexicans speak a Mexican dialect.
Yeah.
You know, not
Yeah.
everybody's speaking the perfect Spanish, Spaniard Spanish, you know.
How did you feel you coming out and spending so much time in a body shop? Was it like sometimes you're there or you're there a lot and it really affected your life? How did it affect you as a woman in a body shop?
Well, I really love my father. And, you know, I don't want to cry. Are you Barbara Walters? I really love... if I can say I loved anybody more unconditionally than I love my husband, it would be my dad.
And
You know.
is your dad or your stepdad?
My stepfather.
Your stepfather.
That's who I speak of when I say my father, because he was in my life, right?
Yes.
So I really love my father, and I could spend a lot of time with my dad because he was cool. He was like the coolest. He was funny, a natural comedian. He would make you, he was the kind of dude that would say something and you would spit out your drink or your food because you've never laughed so hard in your life at his perspective of something. He wasn't the most progressive. So he'd say, like, you know, he'd get to an art show and be like, you artists, you freaks. You know, he'd say things like that, you know. But he was very funny, and I think what I admired most about him, no matter what you did to my father, he didn't hold a grudge. And I'm kind of grudgy. Like, if you wrong me, ooh, I might hold that grudge for a long time. I think that I admire that about my dad, how forgiving he was. And growing up, he was the guy that would be driving down the highway, and if he saw a woman broke down on the side of the highway, he would pull over, help her with her car, go get a new battery, go get gas, whatever that woman's problem was, he would fix that, then give them his card to come to the body shop so he could give her a fair price and not let her get ripped off. And so spending a lot of time in the body shop, it wasn't like, oh, I need to get out of the body shop, I'm bored here. I was never bored there. He always had little things I used to tape cars before they got painted. He always had little things to do, you know, for me. You know, now I realize he was trying to get me to do stuff. He was probably overwhelmed with work, and I was helping him out. But yeah, I really miss that. And when I go to body shops, or I go to, you know, any kind of thing where I smell those smells that I used to smell in the body shop, I get very like pensive and could probably start crying.
You miss him a lot, and you miss the body shop.
I miss him every day of my life. I think about him every day. And I don't think this collection's going to stop anytime soon because it's been kind of cathartic. It's been a very healing thing for me to do these pieces. And I only wish he was alive to be here at this show and see how I've honored him. You know, I think that he didn't think his life meant much. Because most people in a car industry probably think, oh, well, what does my life mean? I'm not really, you know, treating brain cancer, or I'm just a body shop guy. I think a lot of us that don't hold really, you know, superior kind of jobs or something, you don't know what your life means. But I would say to those people that you don't know how you affect somebody's life. Doesn't matter what you do or how much money you have. It's who you are and what you meant to somebody and the things you might have said to them in a time of need, whether that was advice or just love or just to be an ear to listen to, right? I think that's, you know, he meant a lot to a lot of people. And I don't think he knew that in his life, his living life, how he was important to so many people. In so many ways.
You have art here right now, and it's affecting people, it does. And when I asked you before about reactions, I think you took it as negative reaction, but in terms of positive reactions or any kind of reaction, I just want you to give a little idea of what you see as how people see your work, and I'd like you to just briefly tell us what you want people to get from your work. I know you spoke about it, but
I can't really tell people what to get from my work. I wouldn't want to dictate to them, oh, this is how I want you to.
No, but what do you hope? What do you hope?
I just hope they love it, like I love it, right? And I hope for the young people, it makes them look at things in the work that makes them want to go into those, internet wormholes to find out more about the people or the objects or the imagery in the work. It doesn't mean I want them to start smoking or drinking, right? But, I would want them to have their own little imagination about the work and inspire them to do work, right? I look at myself as a success story, even though I'm not that successful, right? I wasn't a trained artist. I'm self-taught. Nothing stops me, and nothing stops you when you have a passion and you have ambition, right?
Right.
So I would hope that, if anything, my story and my work would inspire people to go for what they dream in. If they look at the work and it reminds them of something, or they're reactive to something, I'm open to hear it, and I'm very excited, whatever that perspective is, that's just how I feel about it. I've never been the one, I don't even like explaining the work a lot of times, because I think I get more enjoyment off of you having your own ideas of what each piece means. You telling that story inside your head, right? Kind of the same way we used to tell a story. Oh, if I was Elizabeth Taylor must be hanging out with Frank Sinatra right now at the restaurant. I used to dream like that a lot. Oh, I wonder what Marilyn was doing with, Frankie and the boys.
All right, so I want to thank you.
Thank you.
So much. I want to thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, everybody who came out.
It's been very entertaining, very educational.
And thank the African Cultural Arts, Heritage Cultural Arts Center, and Serge, and Bayunga, and, Mr. Davis, Mr. Harold. Thank you.
And please stay inspired so you can continue inspiring us and entertaining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that came out.